Clearly sold at brokered by eXp Realty here in the West Valley, Phoenix metro cities, and I'm going to be going over the buyer broker exclusive employment agreement. This is all new paperwork effective August 1st. Today is August the 12th. This is the first video in a series that will go over the changes to the paperwork. There are 18 forms that are either new or have been amended. And so this one is the buyer broker exclusive employment agreement. I just made a video about this, and when I was done, I realized it is really long. It's like 29 minutes. So if this one, I'm going to try to go through in about 5 minutes. But if you want a really long, very comprehensive rundown on this form right here, you can look on the YouTube channel, and there will be that video as well as other videos regarding the changes in the paperwork, tour videos, buyer and seller education. And so without any further ado, let's get right into it. I did want to first pull up the, let's see here. I'm going to first pull up this, which is the fines, okay, so that people realize infractions, they're real. For showings, failure to pay, failure to secure buyer broker agreement with buyer prior to showing a listed property, first offense $500, subsequent offense minimum of $5,000, up to a maximum of $15,000, and or suspension from MLS for a minimum of 30 days and up to a maximum of 1 year. So these new rules, they're in effect, they are live, and the governing powers want to make sure that we are following by the new rules immediately. And so although the settlement doesn't go into effect until August 17th in Arizona, all of our paperwork is already updated. And that does not mean it will not change, as there have been several iterations of it since the inception of the changes. But let's get right into this, okay? Just wanted to make sure that you realize that. Up here, first thing it says is notice to buyer. All realtors are required to have a signed written agreement prior to showing a home to a buyer. This way you realize that they're not lying to you, they're not trying to get you to sign something that commits you to something that you don't want to be, right? If you're in the market right now, you need to have sign a buyer broker agreement, whether it's for a single property or an exclusive employment agreement. I've been doing this long enough that I will not use the other form, okay? I put myself out there enough. My marketing is out there. People can find me, get enough education. They can realize by how I carry myself, conduct myself, how what I speak, and the confidence that I speak with, that I know what I'm doing. I am not, this isn't my first rodeo, and if you're not convinced that I'm the one to work with, then you're free to go and find someone that you might want to work with. Anyway, so in the red are things that might have changed, and so I'll just go, it's going to define the specific buyer, the specific broker, and the agent's name. The agreement is exclusive employment agreement between a buyer and a broker in consideration of broker's agreement to assist buyer to locate, negotiate, and facilitate the purchase of a property. Buyer gives a broker the exclusive and irrevocable right to represent the buyer in the purchase of a property during the term. Line 7, buyer acknowledges that signing more than one buyer broker exclusive employment agreement or similar agreements could make buyer liable to compensate multiple brokers. So my best recommendation is to make sure of the person that you want to work with before you sign any of these, okay? And it has a specific start date and a specific ending date. It also shows what you're looking for, whether it be land, residential, or commercial. And it shows that we're to negotiate a buyer's direction to obtain acceptable terms and conditions for the purchase, exchange, or option of the property. Assist buyer during the transaction with the scope of broker's expertise and licensing. And then it says, it shows your agency relationship agency relationship between the buyer and the broker shall be, I would always use the set forth in the real estate agency disclosure and election form. I'm not really sure what other would be used for, but I always use the READ, which is a real estate agency disclosure and election. And then this is important, property viewings. Buyer agrees to work exclusively with the broker and be accompanied by broker on buyer's first visit to any property. If broker does not accompany buyer on the first visit to any property, including a model home, new home, lot, or open house held by a builder, seller, or other real estate broker, buyer acknowledges that the builder, seller, or seller's broker may refuse to compensate broker, which will eliminate any credit against the agreed upon broker compensation below. Basically, this just says once you put a ring on it, you don't go out in public as single anymore, right? So once we have an agreement, then I want to help you find the property in expeditiously as possible, right? And so your agent should be working their tail off to find you the right property and then show them to you in an expeditious manner. Broker compensation is not set by law nor by any board, association of realtors, multiple listing service, or any manner other than it's fully negotiated between broker and buyer in this agreement. It requires initials. It's important that we know that fees are all negotiable. Retainer fee, if any, discloses this information here. Now, if a agent is collecting a retainer fee, that fee is payable to the broker. Broker pays out any disperses funds, okay? And then below that is broker compensation. If buyer or any entity owned or controlled by the buyer closes escrow on a transaction for the purchase, exchange, or option of a property, buyer agrees to compensate broker as followed. And then it shows a percentage of a flat dollar amount or other, okay? And so one of these three has to be filled out, and it has to be specific, okay? So it can't be what's the word? It's got to be very specific, right? And so if it's 2% or 2.5% or 3% of the purchase price, that goes in there. That is specific because no matter what purchase price you get, the $400,000, $500,000, or $600,000, 3% of that is a specific figure. Okay, or a dollar amount or other. I'm not really sure how other would go in that, but okay. And then the broker compensation is in U.S. currency and paid at time of closing and as a condition of closing for purchase or exchange of otherwise agreed upon in writing. Compensation, this is important here. Compensation from seller or seller's broker. A seller or seller's broker may offer compensation to broker. Buyer authorizes broker to accept compensation from seller or seller's broker, which shall be credited against broker's compensation. If seller or seller's broker offered a compensation is greater than the broker compensation, broker shall be paid the broker compensation and the balance shall be credited to the buyer. Okay, so what this is saying, on the previous page, there was a figure that was agreed upon in line 34, 35, or 36. If you land on a property where the seller has already agreed with the listing agent to, say, offer 3% compensation, and we've agreed on 2% compensation, that 1% would go to you as the buyer to be used at your discretion for your own closing costs. All right? And then there's a note about VA regulations. Basically, the VA has a rule that it says a veteran can't pay commissions. And so they lifted that temporarily while they changed their own rules and regulations. And so veterans did have to wait until the 10th. But we're at the 12th, so that's already passed, okay? Failure to complete. Once an acceptable property is located, buyer agrees to act in good faith to acquire the property and conduct any inspections, investigations of the property, and buyer deems material and or important. Compensation after expiration date. This is important just because sometimes you get people that are trying to be tricky and they might realize that we've got this agreement might end in 10 days, and so maybe we'll wait 10 days and go see if we can go directly to the seller. And So there's a reason why that's in here. People have tried to do this before, and so I would recommend any agent, to protect their own work and all their hustle, is to put this out 45 or 60 days to keep anybody from doing anything like that. And then broker shall show listings that fit the buyer's criteria regardless of the compensation offered to broker by seller or seller's broker unless instructed otherwise by buyer in writing. If necessary, buyer instructs broker to negotiate the broker compensation be paid by the seller or seller's broker. These negotiations shall not jeopardize, delay, or interfere with the initiation process or finalizing of a transaction. Notice, if a buyer decides they do not wish to view the property's listings unless there's a seller or seller's broker has offered adequate compensation to broker, the buyer must make that instruction to broker in writing. Okay, so there's a lot of agents that are going back and forth and calling all the listing agents to find out if they're offering compensation, and that's a hassle. Let's just realize something, folks. Everything that's on the market is offered for sale, and all terms are negotiable. So rather than waste time and call listing agents to find out if their sellers are willing to offer compensation, it's a negotiation, okay? Let's find the house, the property, the location that you want, and then we wrap all the terms into the negotiation. In all of my years, going into my 24th year, that's how it's always been. Everything's a negotiation. The big change here is that now the seller is basically agreeing to pay their agent up front. That's what they're signing up for when they take a listing. They may, at that time, additionally agree to pay additional compensation, but that cannot be disclosed in the MLS. All right, I'm going to move on because I could go down a rabbit hole with that and go forever. Equal housing opportunity and release of broker. This says buyer recognizes, acknowledges, and agrees that broker is not qualified, licensed, or advice to give on financial, legal, tax matters regarding real estate transactions. Brokers requested may provide buyer the name of third-party professionals who claim to perform related services. All this is saying is that like we all have vendors that we use, handyman, electricians, plumbers, flooring people, windows, you name it, staging people, and I am not held responsible for their workmanship, whether they show up or not, if they answer the phone or not. Okay, all the people I refer, hopefully they will answer the phone and they'll call you back and they'll do great work. That's why I do refer them out. But this just says that you release the broker of any liability from any references that they give. And an alternate dispute resolution. This is another thing. Basically, this is all new, and it's just saying that you're agreeing to settle any disputes via arbitration, and if it doesn't work at arbitration, then it eventually can land at court, but that you're agreeing to follow the process that is laid out in the forms. That's how it goes. It goes to arbitration, not directly to court, and also saying that you will not join in any class action lawsuit, which is this verbiage is all a direct result of all of these changes that have come based on the NAR settlement. Attorneys' fees and costs. If any non-realtor association proceeding to enforce the compensation due broker pursuant to this agreement, the prevailing party shall be awarded their reasonable attorney fees and arbitration costs. Arizona law. This agreement shall be governed by Arizona law, and the jurisdiction is exclusively conferred on the state of Arizona. So, listen, we have buyers and investors that are from all over the place, and they might take our contract and present it to their attorney, say in New York or something, and an attorney might want to change stuff. We don't change stuff. This is our contract. We just simply fill in the spaces that need to be filled in, but we don't change our boilerplate contract based on an attorney from another state. All right, hopefully that was a lot quicker than the first 29-minute video. You can go to, thank you for sticking by and listening to this. If you have any questions or comments or concerns about the new paperwork process, feel free to reach me. I'm available to take calls, answer your questions or explain this in layman's terms or in deeper, my number is 602-909-9414. You could also look for a monthly webinar that should be starting here in the next couple of weeks for both buyers and sellers. And on that YouTube channel at Andrew Texidor, you can have buyer and seller education and new home construction tours, walkthroughs that show all the plans, talk about incentives offered from the builders, and all sorts of good stuff. Just great education for real estate. My name is Andrew Texidor. I've been selling real estate here, going into my 24th year, and I'd count it an honor to be able to help you in this huge transaction. All right, look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me.